Yes.
Thank
And
you.
everybody else who's on here on our vital crusade.
Thank you so much, Senator. And thank you for everyone joining us. We already have, I think we've already maxed capacity. So thank you. Over 500 folks are on this call. Excuse me. And we are also live streaming on YouTube to catch all of the overflow because we know so many of you signed up. So thank you everybody for joining our Cancel Student Debt Voices delivery event over the past 2 months, actually less than 2 months. Student Debt Crisis, NAACP, Generation Progress, Center for Responsible Lending, Young Invincibles, and NextGen America have collectively gathered over 12,858 stories. And that's because of you, everyone that's joining us on the call. Just thank you so much for all of the stories, for sharing your experiences, your photos. It's really important. And with that, we want to deliver these stories to the Department of Education and to the White House, because as Senator Schumer says all the time, President Biden, with the stroke of a pen, can cancel student debt for millions of Americans. And that's what over 415 organizations and over 80 lawmakers have come together, along with Senator Majority Leader Schumer and Senator Warren, Representative Presley, and so many others, to call the president to do. So we're so honored today to have the Majority Leader on the call with us. We have a great message from Senator Warren. And something I'm particularly happy about, we have many student loan borrowers here today for a student loan borrower panel to share their stories with you directly. And last but very much not least, I'm excited to be joined by Alyssa Milano. I've had the honor of doing Alyssa's podcast a few years back, and since then we've constantly talked about what we can do to end the student debt crisis. And Alyssa constantly shines a spotlight on issues that matter deeply to her. Her advancement of Me Too sparked a viral movement of women fighting against sexual harassment and assault, and she's been involved in Time's Up ever since. For over 15 years, she's been a UNICEF National Ambassador and has constantly, trust me, constantly lobbied members of Congress to make sure that there's rights for all of us, including education reform. Alyssa, so great to see you again. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for including me in this special, special day. Hello, everyone. And I'm so thrilled to be here. And thank you so much for being here. And I, too, would like to thank Student Debt Crisis, the NAACP, Generation Progress, NextGen America, the Center for Responsible Lending, and Young Invincibles for putting this incredible event together. I mean, there are 519 people on this Zoom, and we had to open the YouTube channel up. So obviously this is an issue that is very, 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 very important. So it's incredible. Cancel Student Debt, the Voices campaign, collected nearly 13,000 stories from people impacted by student debt. There is nothing holding back our economy more than student debt. It is an anchor, and it's keeping people from starting families, from buying homes and investing in our nation. It's hampering our economic recovery from COVID and our efforts to fight racial inequities and the growing racial wealth gap. And just get this, women are paid far less than men in America, but we hold 2/3 of the student debt. It's truly unbelievable. And that's despite the fact that we're way more likely to go to school and to graduate from school than men. Student debt crushes our ability to hold power in our society when we're just trying to make it to payday so we can write, another check to the student loan company? So the stories collected by the Cancel Student Debt Voices Project, they matter. People from all corners of the country, people of every age and from all backgrounds, shared how their student debt is keeping them from living the lives they deserve. The change in our culture would be immeasurable if President Biden were to cancel student debt. And please do not let a government that passed a $1.7 trillion tax cut for the rich tell you that it's too expensive to forgive a similar amount of student debt. So over 80 lawmakers in the Senate and in the House support resolutions calling on President Biden to cancel student debt immediately by executive action. And Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is, well, he's incredible, but he's leading the movement of legislators urging the president to use all of his powers to address this important issue. And he is here to tell us more about that. So please, please welcome Senator Schumer.
Well, thank you, Alyssa. And first, let me thank Alyssa Milano. She is a beacon for justice and compassion and for forcing America to live up to its ideals. I wish we had 20 more Alyssa Milanos, and then maybe, all of us in the Senate could step down because she would have accomplished all the things we need to accomplish in the Senate. Fortunately, one of the things we don't have to get through the Senate is the cancellation of student debt. Because as Natalia Abrams mentioned, and I thank Natalia she has been such an amazing leader here as head of the student debt crisis. And I too just want to give my shout out to all of the groups, the NAACP and the student debt crisis, NextGen America, Center for Responsible Lending, and Young Invincibles. We kicked off this campaign in April, and now we have close to 13,000 stories. But thank you all for doing what you have done. But the president can sign this with a flick of a pen. And the anguish of millions and millions of students, former students, their parents, their families, could be gone. It just is so awful that here people are promised you go to college and it's going to be the ladder up. And for too many people, student debt is the anchor that holds them down. And people wake up in the middle of the night. How am I going to pay the $500 I owe this month? Families, people put off getting married. People put off having families. They want to do a job that helps people. Oh no, I can't do that. I got to go to a job I hate because I got to pay off my debt. It just so ruins people's lives. It also ruins our economy. The federal government is charging our students and those who have student debt 7% interest. I'm from Brooklyn. I'd use a curse word before that 7%, but I won't, out of deference to those on the Zoom who wouldn't want that. But can you believe that? You can get a mortgage for 4 or 5%. You can get a car loan for 4 or 5%. And the federal government is making profit off the backs of our students and our graduates and our young people and our middle-aged people. And there are people at 50 who haven't paid off their debt. So this is just a disgrace. And we have mounted a campaign. Senator Warren, and I give her a huge amount of credit, she and I have met with the president and we said, we're going to keep at it until you do this. And to his credit, he said, go ahead. And he's talked about 10,000. That's not enough, but we're keeping the pressure on him. And these stories will be amazing. Let me say a couple of things more that people should know. This is not only an issue for so many millions, 43 million people have 1.6 trillion in debt. And Alyssa was so right. The old Trump regime, all our friends on the other side of the aisle cut taxes by $1.7 trillion on the wealthiest people. And they say we can't afford to do this. Of course we can. Of course we can. But it's a racial justice issue. 28% of the wealth gap between black and white, and a similar number between white and brown, is caused by student debt. So many young people of color whose families had never gone to college got taken advantage of by these horrible colleges, a lot of them for-profit. They say, hey, sign up here. You don't have to pay. We'll get you a degree. A, of course they had to pay. B, of course, there was such a fraud to a lot of these colleges. No one got a degree, so they can't even afford a job, get a job that helps them pay off. So that's a huge issue. And it's an issue for our national economy. Can you imagine if every student who had debt instead was buying a car, going on a vacation, going to a restaurant, doing this, doing that? Imagine the money. We're looking for money to pump into the economy to get us out of this COVID mess. Guess what? There's no greater engine than taking the burden off students so they can use the money in much more productive ways to get our economy going once again. So we are pushing and pushing and pushing. I believe this so strong. It's in my bones, it's in my heart, it's in my mind all the time. I thank everyone for telling their stories. Stories really matter. And let me listen to this, 79% of the people who shared their stories support student debt cancellation because of racial equity. 75%, they wanted to save for retirement. 56% to buy a home. Makes the case. So folks, keep up the fight. To all of you who are listening, to all of you on YouTube, call, email, write the President of the United States, say, it's about time, let's cancel student debt, let's free our students and our young people and our middle-aged people, 43 million people from this huge burden on their shoulders, set them free, cancel the debt. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, everybody. On to victory, folks.
Thank you so much, Senator Schumer, for those remarks and for your leadership on behalf of student borrowers. It has been so helpful. My name is Ashley Harrington. I am the Federal Advocacy Director at the Center for Responsible Lending, and I'm so excited to be here today with all of you and all of these great partners in this fight. Leader Schumer really laid it out. This is a major problem. It's a problem, $1.7 trillion, 45 million people, a problem that, just like every other crisis, is disproportionately impacting Black borrowers and communities of color. It's no different than the current pandemic and recession, no different than the Great Recession, which many of these communities had yet to recover from when the current pandemic hit. So we have to think about this not just as an economic boost, but also a racial justice issue. And it's really encouraging that so many borrowers were willing to share their stories, because we put real faces and experiences to a crisis that too often we describe with numbers. And the numbers are bad. You've heard them, 1.7 trillion, 45 million people, almost a quarter were in default or delinquency before we even got to the current pandemic. But this is more than just numbers. These are real people. Our policy failures have real consequences. It's impacting the way people lead their lives, where they live, what jobs they take, how they think about their future, and whether they feel like they can prepare for a future, whether they start families. All of it is affecting their mental health, their hopes and their dreams. These stories really show how broken our higher ed financing system is and why we can no longer just tinker at the margins. We have to cancel this debt. We have to start over. We have to do better. We have to do it for the 45 million and all of the people who are impacted, not just the borrowers themselves. So many people are indirectly impacted by student debt. It's so much more than just the 45 million. It's our entire economy. It's our communities. So I also have the pleasure of introducing a short video with remarks from one of our other congressional champions. She has been an outspoken advocate for student borrowers for years and has fought hard to keep them front and center. Senator Elizabeth Warren, her leadership and work has brought us closer than ever to relief, because she gets how important this is, that we are on the brink of a potentially disastrous scenario. So now I want to leave you with the incredible Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Hello to everyone at today's Cancel Student Debt Voices event. To those of you who shared your stories and your struggles with student debt, thank you, thank you, thank you for speaking out. You are a critical part of this fight. I've said it before, and Leader Schumer has said it before, canceling up to $50,000 in student loan debt is one of the most effective executive actions that President Biden can take on his own to kickstart an economic recovery and advance racial justice. Right now, we are facing a student loan debt time bomb that could throw millions of families over a financial cliff when it explodes. When the pause on student loan payments ends on September 30th, people are going to struggle. They're going to miss deadlines. They're going to be delinquent. They're going to owe penalties. The average borrower, is going to have to start repaying nearly $400 a month to the government instead of spending that money in the economy. This makes student loan debt an anchor dragging down our already struggling economy. It means borrowers are putting off starting businesses, buying homes, starting families. For someone who's already struggling, $30,000 or $50,000 of student loan debt means not being able to come up with a down payment and qualify for a mortgage. It makes college debt a generational equity issue. And this crisis has hit people of color especially hard. Black students have to borrow more money to go to college, borrow more money while they're in college, and have a harder time paying it off when they are out of college. Just one stat on this. 20 years after starting college, the average white borrower owes about 5% of their debt. The end is in sight. But the average Black borrower still owes 95% of their debt. They're going to be paying a long time. Canceling $50,000 in student debt would close the Black-white wealth gap among borrowers by 25 points, and the Latino white wealth gap by 27 points for borrowers. 45 million people have student loan debt. That's about 1 in 5 adults in this country. This is our chance to reshape how people view the government, our chance to boost the economy, and our chance to help close the racial wealth gap. Data from the Department of Education reveals that if we cancel $50,000 of student loan debt, 36 million Americans would have their student loans completely wiped out. That's 84% of all borrowers. So that's why Leader Schumer, Congresswoman Presley, and hundreds of groups and thousands of people like you will keep urging President Biden to act, to cancel up to $50,000 in student debt, and to lock in brighter futures for millions of Americans. Thank you for being in this fight. It is an honor to fight alongside you.
I hope you all enjoyed that as much as I did. It's always great to hear from Senator Warren and hear her passion and how much she cares about student borrowers. She couldn't be here today, but wanted to send those remarks. And now I want to turn it over to my colleague, Justin Atkins from NextGen America.
Hey everyone, definitely excited to be here and to be part of this fight. Like Ashley said, I'm Justin Atkins, the National Political Manager at NextGen America. And I just want to say a few words. I think the folks before me pretty much laid it out, but I think what it comes down to is this is an issue that affects people from all walks of life. It affects different ages, it affects different genders, races, but we do know that there is a significant gender disparity when it comes to student loan debt. We know there is a significant, racial disparity when it comes to student loan debt, right? This isn't just an issue about the economy, about, dollars in our pocket. This is a gender issue. It's a racial issue. It's a public health issue, a justice issue, and ultimately it's a moral issue, right? People should have the opportunity to get an education and use that opportunity to get ahead in life, not being held back after graduating with this debt. I recently heard from a retired educator who took out debt in 1992 and is still paying off that debt till this day. I spoke to a parent who has debt, a borrower who has debt, whose kids are right now in college acquiring that same debt. It's a generational issue. And that's why I'm so excited to be in this fight. We know that over 54% of all voters believe that President Biden should cancel student debt today, $50,000 of student debt today. we know that 75% of Black people, of Black voters, believe that President Biden should cancel student debt today. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a majority. That is a majority. And that's how I'm excited to be with y'all, because y'all are taking action, sharing your stories with us. Those 12,800 stories that continuing to come in are helping us to help you take action, right? And I'm so excited to send it over to my friend and colleague, Ella, and the Generation Progress team, who is getting ready to do something super excited. So without further ado, let's keep bringing those stories in. Let's cancel student debt. Let's stay in this fight and not give up. And I'm going to pass it over to Ella and Generation Progress team.
Me? Awesome. So I'm Ella Azulai with Generation Progress. I'm standing here outside the Department of Education with the stories of over 12,000 students. Start by noting that this might be the building that Betsy DeVos worked in, but this is not the Betsy DeVos Department of Education. Secretary Cardona's department is full of appointees and experts who want to work for borrowers. There was a big change here. Elections matter, and you voted for an administration that works for borrowers. So we're going to make sure that they hear from you and are held accountable to President Biden's election promises to deliver debt cancellation for borrowers. As you know, 2 months ago, we launched the hashtag Cancel Student Debt Voices project. And since then, student loan borrowers have come forward from all across the country to share their student debt stories. We put out the call to action and you all answered. And thank you for answering, because our voices as to this movement. Our leaders in the White House, Congress, and even here in the Education Department need to be reminded of the reality of living with student debt each and every day until borrowers see real relief. Because that reality is not pretty. 45 million student loan borrowers are being crushed by $1.7 trillion in student debt. The scale of this crisis is simply unprecedented. As you can see, I have a few borrowers' stories beside me and the rest of the nearly 13,000 stories in these boxes. Reading through the responses will certainly give policymakers a glimpse into the lives of borrowers. Because of our loans, we are either struggling to make ends meet, can't afford payments and go into default, or have to give up our hopes and dreams of financial stability, home ownership, starting a family, pursuing a better career, further education, and so much more. And the outlook can be even bleaker for some borrowers. As was mentioned already, Black borrowers are disproportionately negatively impacted by the student debt crisis because of systemic racism, generational poverty, redlining, educational segregation, the racial wage gap, the school to prison pipeline, racist banking policies, and more. Black students are more likely to need to borrow more, and take longer to pay off their loans. Women of color are impacted by both the racial wage gap and the gender wage gap, as well as other factors that make loan repayment even more difficult. I want to amplify the voices of a few borrowers right now, because what they experience is an example of what millions of people are going through. Milagros from Massachusetts said, quote, "Student loan debt has prevented me from purchasing a home, finding a good job, and affording healthcare. It doesn't have to be this way. If we made college free and canceled student debt, the entire country would benefit from a stronger economy, equitable access to the American dream, and fewer barriers to racial equity." Lauren, a transgender first-generation student loan borrower from New Jersey, says, quote, "I worry how I'll be able to provide for my children. I want to stay home with my young kids, but my loan payment of $1,000 a month prevents that. Without that payment, I could stay home until my kids went to school." Rachel from Minnesota is a Native American first-generation borrower from a low-income household based on a reservation who pursued higher education to, quote, "break the family cycle of poverty and do better for myself, future kids, and family someday than what I grew up with." And they support free college and debt cancellation because, quote, "it doesn't just help me, it would help our country and our economy and relieve the burden that other people my age feel when having to make the decision between important or essential things in life and paying back a loan that has accrued so much interest that it's now the size of a mortgage payment." The common thread here is that borrowers are struggling because of student loan debt. Millions of people are struggling to make payments, are in forbearance, or defaulted on their loans. We need policymakers and elected officials in our corner. Canceling student debt and passing free college are only two of many policies that can be implemented to relieve borrowers of the crushing weight of the student debt crisis. Right now, we're delivering your stories to the Education Department and the White House. We're asking that they take your experiences into account to improve the borrower experience and help inform debt cancellation policy. As I said at the top, this is not the DeVos Department of Education. We're trusting the new staff here to read your stories and use your heartfelt messages to shape and guide upcoming policy. We're asking the staff to listen to the will of the people who put them in this building. There are millions of us borrowers, and we'll keep using our voices to keep demanding President Biden and Secretary Cardona keep your promise and cancel student debt. Back to you, Cody.
Awesome. That was really incredible. I know, after a year of this pandemic, it's great to see that advocates can be on the ground together in person and making a difference, because we know just how powerful that can be. So thank you, Ella. Thank you to the team at Generation Progress for going out there, making sure these voices get into the hands of people who can really make a difference. So, we've heard from lawmakers, we've heard from advocates, we've even heard from special actor and activist Alyssa Milano. But I have the great pleasure of being able to introduce real people with student loan debt who aren't just borrowers, but they're our friends, our neighbors, our family. This is our community, and they're all impacted by student loan debt. So I should have on the line today, I've got Noah Schultz, I have Wilson Montoya, I have Sheldon, and I also have Christine Shea. Are you all on the line today?
Yes, I am here. Wilson.
All right.
Yes, I'm here. Sheldon.
I'm here.
Great. I'm so happy you guys were able to make it. Again, this entire campaign is about putting the voices of student loan borrowers front and center, because we need to hear from everyday Americans to make a difference. And so I don't want to go on too much longer. I want to give you all an opportunity to share your stories. So I'll introduce you one by one. If you want to tell us a little bit about your student debt experience and what debt cancellation would mean for you. Christine, I think I saw you hop on last there on the camera. So why don't I pass it to you first? You can tell us about what student debt cancellation would mean for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here. I admit I'm a little bit, my heart is racing because this is such an important issue to me. So, and everybody else, it's just such a huge thing. So my name is Christine Shea. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a registered art therapist in the state of California. I'm a first generation student. And initially, I did not go to college. I went to community college and earned an AA, but I did not go to college for fear of being in debt. Several years passed, so I do appreciate you all kind of mentioning the middle-aged crowd who's owes some debt in terms of going back to college and really wanting to help my community and help people and work towards mental health. But it meant that I needed to complete my bachelor's in undergrad and then go into a master's, because a master's is what you have to have in order to conduct mental health and be a clinician. So upon graduating with my master's to work in the field of mental health, I owed $136,000 at the end of my borrowing. I engaged in the income-based repayment plan. I went into the student loan forgiveness plan, which are both great plans. But it still didn't account for my cost of living where I live in the Bay Area, which is one of the most expensive places in the nation. And they didn't account that for my $500 monthly. I cried when I heard that. The person on the other end didn't really respond, but I get that they probably deal a lot with that. And so I made my payments, and I made my payments religiously for years afterwards. And I've actually paid off $20,000 towards my loan. I have not been able to consider buying a home. I have not been able to get a new car, which would have been kind of neat. And I certainly can't even consider the marriage and family route, even though I am engaged. It's just too expensive. Paying off $20,000 led me to seeing an increase of $4,000, and then I owed $140,000. So through the years, the interest accrual has absolutely put me into quicksand. I don't know how to get out of it. I don't know what to do. I feel very disheartened. I'm in the public loan forgiveness program. I accidentally made 2 payments in 1 month, which resulted in disqualifying me for the program, which I wasn't aware of, and continued to pay on for 3 years. And now I have to do a petition in order to get that accepted as part of being working for a nonprofit. So I feel very lost. I don't know what to do. And part of me is seriously considering moving out of the state of California to find a home that might be more affordable, but I'm licensed in California. So does that mean then that I can no longer conduct the mental health services and serve my community the way I wanted to? So forgiveness on loan would absolutely allow me to stay in my home state of California, which I absolutely love. I can't imagine moving anywhere else. It would allow me to continue to work with my community and to work for those that are in need of mental health services. And it would allow me to actually consider maybe that car or a home or something. It's just the dream. And then being the age that I'm at, can I even look at retirement? So these are just things that I'm bringing up in terms of my experience, and the compounded interest has really, and the interest capitalization has really buried me. And so I would also on the other side like to advocate for at least the interest rates, because this last year has helped tremendously in my ability to kind of not be in the quicksand. So so yeah, this is where I'm at. This is how I'm stuck. And I really appreciate you guys hearing my story, because I know I'm not the only one. So thank you.
Christine, that is absolutely the case. I see in our chat here that folks are jumping in and saying, you know, their experience was really similar. I wanted to ask one thing, because I know me and you got to talk about your student loan debt a few weeks ago. And one thing that you mentioned was that you were talking a lot to your peers in the nonprofit space about their rights and their options, because they didn't know about the student loan situation that they were in. What do you think debt cancellation would mean for, you know, your peers, the people that you work with in your nonprofit work, you know, those around you who would also benefit from all of this?
Oh my gosh, it would be tremendous. I mean, advocating on a certain level where you're just trying to share with your peers maybe some of the loan forgiveness programs is essential in trying to spread the word, but so many people are overworked in the nonprofit sector in terms of having to keep these 60-hour-a-week workloads with lower pay and still not accommodating in where we live and what we're doing. And so it really is a tremendous effort to try to find nonprofit organizations that can also educate the students that they bring in, and then also just kind of really recognizing that maybe there are some options and making this more accessible to those, so that we can move forward in our mental health crisis. Was another part of my advocacy, and really kind of trying to get, you know, the word out there about destigmatizing mental health. But unfortunately, and I really do mean this, patients that I work with would be very wary in considering higher education that is needed for such a job, because of the amount of debt that's and for master's students, the interest rates are higher. It's almost like you're punished for it. So so I appreciate that question, definitely.
Wonderful. You know, thank you again for sharing your story and for coming on this call to share it again. You know, it's one thing to share with advocates, another thing to share it publicly and let others know that your experience is like theirs. All right, I want to move on to another borrower here. I want to move on to Sheldon Spivey. And Sheldon, I had a great conversation with just a few weeks ago, and it's really my privilege to have him on the call today, because not only is Sheldon passionate about student debt cancellation, he's also doing work in his own community to help the youth in his community thrive. And so, you know, we're grateful for the work he does, and he's grateful for the work that we do, and it's a great relationship. Sheldon, I want to open the floor for you to share a little bit about your experience and what debt cancellation would mean for you and your community as well.
Thank you, Cody. I really appreciate the effort that everyone is doing here, as I said in the past. You know, I'm a 55-year-old African-American male. I went to school because that's basically what society said that an African-American male needed to do. I didn't have many choices in my life. I didn't have many role models. So I went through the system myself. I'm in the substance abuse, human services. I'm in mental health field. I have a master's in human services, and I'm a credentialed alcohol substance abuse counselor internationally. I have over $220,000 in student debt because I am chasing a dream that they said if you go to college, things are going to work out for you. You get a degree, you should be able to get a good job. Not so fast. That just is not how it works. Unfortunately, you're still competing against others that has higher degrees, that have degrees from better colleges that you were able to weren't able to go to because you were not financially eligible to go to a Duke or USC. So therefore, you go to a community college and then another college to get a master's. But when those interviewers are looking at what school you went to, and I'm African American, male in my field, that's degrading. It has hit me hard. Currently, I am unemployed. I was in the field for 25 years. I was fired during the pandemic after being with an agency, government agency for 11 years. I believe it was because I was making too much money. Now, in the field of substance abuse and human and mental health, you really need to be licensed. If you're not licensed, then you're not going anywhere. And I was I was just dead in the water. I couldn't get promoted. I was making too much money. They found something to fire me on, and they did so. That's my belief. I am struggling, not receiving my unemployment right now from Virginia. And I'm just trying to hold on. I put on my suit and my tie because it makes me feel good. And knowing that when this pandemic is over, knowing that even when they start sending me notices that I have to pay back a student loan, my student loan is looking at $5,000 a month. That's just ridiculous for someone to be able to pay something like that, especially in my situation at this point. My ex-wife has a tremendous debt. It affected my two children. They're in debt with student loan. I have a lot of friends that are in student loan debt. Canceling this debt, which is, from a trauma perspective, this is very traumatic to have this type of weight on your back and to be living with this daily. I am newly married. My wife has kids in Belize that we're trying to get over here. As an African American man struggling, it's like, how I'm going to do this. So I, in the process of starting my nonprofit, to help youth develop some alternative to schooling, traditional. We need some vocational trainings for our youth because let's be realistic, they're not going to be accepted into college. And if they do, again, we go into a cycle of them going into college in debt. You go in debt. That's not fair, and that's not a great society.
Sheldon, we hear you. I see again in the chat, just so many people are relating to these stories. I remember when we spoke, one thing that really inspired me, and I kind of alluded to it earlier in the conversation, but canceling student debt for you, it would mean less about you, the individual, and more about what you could do for your community, for those that you want to help. So I just want to give you an opportunity because I think it's important for people to know, if you had your debt canceled, what would you do with that? And how would you make the world and your community a better place because you didn't have that debt burden anymore?
I will put back into the community. Definitely. I'm about giving. I grew up and I love giving. Our youth need to know that there's other ways to be successful, and we have to start putting those ways out there. We need more mentors. We need more of us African American men to show that we can be successful without having traditional college education or degree. In today's society, there's so many skills that you can have, and there's skills such as being a mechanic, barber, that will never go away. And this is what we need to be teaching our kids. If they can't go to college, then what else are they going to do? We can't just say, okay, you're not college material, good luck. That's not fair society. I am passionate about getting into our juvenile justice systems and decreasing recidivism. Over 75% of African American males here in Maryland and 13 of the juvenile justice facilities are African American males. What are we doing with those males once they re-enter into society? I'm looking at opening a reentry program that develops a comprehensive vocational, educational, life skill program that can give them a variety of skills that they can come out and live, be productive members of society, not only now, but learn how to be for their generations to come.
Thank you, Sheldon, so much for sharing that story. I should say, I think you're a role model. I also think you look sharp in that suit. So thanks for putting it on. You're looking great. And your story is really important.
Thank
So
you. You never know who's watching. I dress to impress. You never know.
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I love it. And we are, again, just so appreciative that you'll share your story. I know so many people listening today feel the same. They're inspired by your story, by your experience, and by your ambition and hopes for what you can do in the future. So I thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I've got another borrower on the line. I want to pass it to Wilson Montoya. Wilson, before we jump into your student debt story, I know Senator Schumer had to hop off the call, but you had a great story about Senator Chuck Schumer and your college journey, your education journey. I was hoping you could share it with us because we really enjoyed it.
Yes. Thank you, Corey. Thank you, everyone that has been very supportive today with all the things here. When I'm first generation student here in the United States, and I came when I was 29 years old. So I went back to college when I was a little older in my life. And when I graduated in 2009 at St. Joseph College with my human services bachelor's degree, Senator Schumer was in the ceremony. And I heard him saying, keep going with your education. This is not the end. You gotta continue with your education. And he had a very motivational and very nice story about his life and how he grew up and how struggles he had in his life. And he was able to make it. And I said, well, I'm gonna be able to make it because I'm struggling with some things, probably different things that he struggled with, but I'm going to be able to make it too. So it motivated me to continue to go to school. And then I decided to go to get my master's degree in social work. I hear you, Christine. I hear you, Sheldon. Listening to you guys is like I was talking. It's the same issues that we have. It's the same conditions. It's the same situation when we go and take a human services field or social work or counseling career. We wanted to help other people, but we don't realize at the end when we graduated how much money we're gonna be owing if we decided to keep moving. And the message that we said that we get and is sent out every day to every immigrant and anybody who's living in the States is go get your education. Education is power. Sheldon said, without education, you're not gonna go anywhere. And that's true. Yeah, without education, I wouldn't be able to hold the job that I have with the local Department of Social Service as a CPS worker. However, last 3, 4, 5 years, I had to get another job in order to be able to pay my student loans because I couldn't be able to pay with the money that I was making just in the county. So now, September coming, I don't know how I'm going to be able to pay the loans. You guys mentioned something about paying every year religiously, and then you owe the same money or even more money. I started paying my loans about 5 years ago. 6 years ago, I pay religiously every month, and my debt is even higher now. I started with $70-something thousand, and now it's $87,000. So instead of going down, the debt is going up because for those of you who know, we are on the income repayment plan. The income repayment plan, you pay only a portion of the interest You don't pay the principal of the loan. So your interest and your loan stays the same forever. One of the things that I wanted to share also was Senator Schumer mentioned about how the interest is higher than a mortgage or having a car loan. Yet, the only way that I was able to get a brand new car or secondhand car, I changed my car in December, it was because I got a loan with an interest of 2.5. 2.5 for a car loan and 6.7 for a student loan, who you can do better things with the education, who you can do better things in the society. That's not acceptable. It's unfair to us. The other thing that I wanted to mention is I've been advocating for so many other issues. And when you put a face into an issue, people tend to listen because my face represents only one person. But when I was listening to Christine and Sheldon, they are people like me and they have the same story like me. One is living in one state, the other one is living in another state. I'm living in New York, and it's the same story. It's the same struggles that we go. And behind us is millions and millions and millions of Americans that are dealing with the same issue. That's why we need to cancel student loans. The student loans need to be canceled because the impact that is gonna be going into the communities, into the states, into the counties is gonna be a great impact for better. We are overcoming COVID, but without money to be able to spend and do other things, we aren't gonna be able to do anything. September comes, we're gonna have to start paying the loans, and then we're gonna have money to do it. So that's why we urge Senator Schumer to help us and advocate for us, because there is 1, 2, 3, 4 people talking today, but it's millions and millions of people that wanted to voice their struggles. They wanted to talk to you about how difficult it is to live when you have that in your bag. Senator Schumer talks about mental health and well-being. Yeah, when you have a debt or almost $100,000, besides other things that you have to pay, food on the table and anything else, how you can sleep well? You can't. How you can be able to help those people that you went to school for because you wanted to become a helper and help other people in your community when you are dealing with more struggles than they are. I don't know if you have any questions, Corey.
Yeah, Wilson, I think those were great comments. I think, many of us are looking at October 1st when payments resume, and we're really concerned about it.
Yep.
Debt cancellation before then is the best approach that we can, clear the slate as much as possible and focus on fixing the system moving forward. So we share that.
Yes.
One question for you, Wilson, before I move on to Noah here. We tell everyone, our supporters all the time, urge your lawmakers to take action, call on your lawmakers to do the right thing. You're in New York, your senator was on earlier, Chuck Schumer is leading this movement. How does it feel to have a legislator on your side? And what do you say to those who, maybe live in a state where their senator's not on board, but they could maybe join this movement?
Well, what I can say is there is some other issues that I sometimes I was advocating for. And then, sorry, I think I was mute. Let me unmute. I was advocating for some issues when sometimes not everybody agrees what you're saying, what you're advocating for, and then not helping you with that. You need to continue advocating because you need to let people know and you need to let people understand that this is a real problem. This is a crisis, and then we need to end this crisis. And we need to talk more to those people that are not on our side than those people that are in our side. Because Senator Schumer said that at the beginning of the speech, I'm with you, I'm supporting you, I think the president can do this, but he's with us. He will continue supporting us. But for those of you that your legislators are not on your side, keep talking to them. It doesn't matter because they are another party or they are not supporting you, they're not gonna listen to you. They're gonna have to listen to you no matter what. And then you're gonna keep telling them why and the reasons why a student debt has to be canceled.
Awesome. Spot on. We all agree, Wilson. I actually just put a link in the chat for those who are on Zoom. If you want to send a letter directly to the White House, let them know that you care, wherever you are in America, that this matters to you.
Yep.
All right, so I'm seeing we are almost at the top of the hour, and we have another borrower that I want to hear from. I've got Noah on the line. Noah, I know you've been sharing your voice recently with folks on the state level, local level. Now here you are talking about debt cancellation in Washington, D.C. Tell us about your experience and let us know, what would debt cancellation mean for you?
Awesome, Cody. Thanks so much. And I'll keep this quick. I think everybody spoke volumes to our shared experiences. What an all-star cast. I can't believe I'm even here. I don't know how this happened. clearly there's over 13,000 people, and I bet that's a fraction of everybody that has similar stories. So I appreciate just being one voice. So my name's Noah. I'm beaming in from California. Happy Pride. My experience is mainly with the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And I would love to actually be able to see the number of hands that would be raised for difficulties and frustrations and concerns as people move through navigating the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. I just want to make the point that this was a program provided by the US government to help us guide ourselves into public service positions. We all know that public service doesn't pay like Wall Street. We aren't going down to mutual funds to make a ton of money. Like Sheldon and Christine and Wilson said, we're all invested in the public good, and we want our work to reflect those ideals. I went back to grad school in 2008. Since then, I've accrued over $300,000 in student loans. The idea was to go into the Peace Corps, because basically graduating in 2010 from grad school in DC, where all they offer are unpaid internships, that then turn into a job that pays $45,000, $50,000, $60,000. You can't afford it. It doesn't make any sense. The interest rates are crazy. And you just realize that the money you are putting towards your loans aren't even hitting all of the interest. So I went into the Peace Corps due to paperwork issues and loopholes and communication problems when this whole PSLF program started. None of my time really counted because I kept getting kicked out of the repayment programs that you're required to be in, but everything was by paper and not really electronic. So it was very difficult to manage. So all that time didn't count. Came back to the States, did a Vista AmeriCorps position, finally started getting into the public service loan forgiveness, but then you realize there's just not a lot of positions that pay in nonprofit work, especially in natural resources and climate change, which is what I was in at first, to help service loans and actually save some money. So I ended up going back to school. I'm a physician assistant now. I work in addiction medicine and in emergency medicine, and had to take out more loans for a second degree. And now I'm trying to keep my lips above water, just saving some money and servicing those loans. One thing that's come up specifically was what we can do with the money if we didn't have to focus so much on such a huge debt burden. My home lender wouldn't even approve a mortgage loan without a letter from the loan servicer saying that our loans were in forbearance for COVID. So without those letters, we don't even qualify for a mortgage loan. So it stymies our ability to invest in our own future. It helps keep us from really developing some financial security. And it honestly is dictating what kinds of jobs we can do. Like Christine's saying, she's potentially having to move out of the state. I'm in California too. It is expensive out here. So some of the recommendations that I think would be helpful is, A, we need to expand public service loan forgiveness. We need more jobs that apply. I'm in the emergency room dealing with COVID patients constantly. That doesn't count because it's not a federally qualified health center. We need part-time work to count. I work in opiate use addiction, and that's part-time, but that doesn't count. We have an opiate use heroin crisis, and that work is not counting. So all the work that I'm doing that's public service oriented, still doesn't qualify me for this program. We need to work on the interest rates. Mine have been in the high 6s to 8s since 2008. That's crazy. I have $90,000 in just interest. So that's bananas. I would love to see some type of program where if we did invest in something large, like home payments, cars, health insurance, that could be reflected in our student loan payment, right? So some type of investment in our own economic security could actually be reflected in a reduced amount of loans. It's just a bummer now. We get to the point where when our younger generation or family and friends ask about going to grad school, I say don't do it. It's too much of a financial burden. And if that's our message, to not go back to school because you'll never get out of debt, I think we're looking at this completely backwards. So that's my story, Cody. I hope that's helpful, and I really appreciate the platform.
Noah, thank you so much. I'm going to wrap up here in just a second, but since we have you at the top, I want to give you one opportunity. We recently spoke to borrowers from this project, and we just straight up asked them, if you could talk to the president about debt cancellation, what would you say and what would you call on him to do in relation to canceling student loan debt? So I'll give you the floor. Pitch your message, because I know so many other borrowers wish they could tell the president exactly what they feel about debt cancellation.
Yeah, President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, this would be probably one of the most significant policy decisions made for the younger generation. Not even younger. It is cross-generational. It's demoralizing. It affects everything that we do in life. And it doesn't seem like there's any way out, whether government programs, grants, fellowships, debt, when you just don't pay your debt, there's no way out. Give us a way out. We are active. We are driven. We're motivated. We are not sitting on our couches, as you can hear from our stories. We want to make this a better country. We need it now. And this is something that would really just be something for you guys to do that would really drive that forward.
Incredible. Well, this has to be one of the best events that I've seen organized around this issue. We heard from lawmakers, we heard from advocates on the ground, and we heard from student loan borrowers themselves. So, as we told you, we've collected over nearly 13,000 student debt stories. So the next step in this campaign is really about making a difference and changing the hearts and minds of lawmakers and those in Washington. So I urge you all, please, if you haven't shared your story, now is the time. I'm going to put a link in the chat for those that are on Zoom with us. Share your story. Then, if you've already shared your story, make sure you get a message directly to the White House. I will share an action link with you all as well. StudentDebtCrisis.org and our partners are trying to really make sure that your voices get in front of the people that can make a difference. That starts with your story, and it starts by taking action. So I will put those in the chat. And then I just want to thank everyone who joined today's call, the advocates, the borrowers, the lawmakers. It really was special. So thank you all so much. All right, everyone have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone, for sharing your stories with us.
Bye, Cody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.